Okay, looks like I'm live, so that's awesome. So I'm going to be discussing the vitamin D scam, and you may be wondering, what is there scammy about vitamin D? Well, there's been a lot of recommendations that I'm seeing continually right now for people should be supplementing with vitamin D because it's supposedly going to boost their immune and do all kinds of great things, and also based on the fact that a lot of people are supposedly low on vitamin D. So this reminds me very much of the advice in the past, things like low fat diet was going to be healthier and so on. There's a lot of misinformation involved in what's going on. The misinformation begins with the fact that vitamin D isn't even a vitamin. Okay, so that's your starting point. It's not a vitamin. It's closer to a hormone, in fact, and it's very powerful in your body. Um, but the basis of the scam really comes around by a number of things, and then the major thing is the test for it. Okay, so first of all, they've raised the levels of what they're calling low. So what is considered low now wouldn't have been considered low in the past. That's a small part of the problem, but the bigger problem by far is that when they measure your vitamin D, they're measuring it in a completely ridiculous way that's not close to giving you a real picture. So to make this very, very simple, I'm going to explain it like this. So you have vitamin D in two primary forms in your body. It's inactive form and it's active form. Okay. So what they should be doing is measuring the whole thing. And then you have a really good idea of what's going on. But what they actually do is they only measure the inactive part of the vitamin D. Okay. So it's a little bit like if you wanted to know the population of a city and you only counted the people in their homes in bed asleep and ignored everybody else, and then used that figure as the population for the city. How ridiculous would that be? That is a very close analogy to what they're doing. They are only measuring the inactive part of the vitamin D. And guess what? When you're under attack, when you're sick or anything, your inactive D goes across to become active. So when you're low in inactive, it's usually because you're high in active. Unless you measure the both, you can't know, of course. So just to measure inactive D is wholly and utterly useless and is not going to give you anything close to a reasonable picture of what's going on. Now, that's not even getting into the fact that the most vitamin D supplements are synthetic and poison to your body and don't reflect really what you get from the sun anyway. Okay, so this and on top of that, if you then put too much D into your what inactive, which is what they're doing there, it's serum D. So it can actually throw off and create imbalances in your body, in particular in the area of calcium, and can cause serious problems. So you really do not want to be supplementing with D in anything other than what you get from food. And do you know something about vitamin D in food? It's in hardly any foods, and that should tell you something. Why is it so scarce in food if it's so important for human immune system and so on? We, so there are a few foods that you can get it in. Typically, from a supplement point of view, something like fermented cod liver oil would provide vitamin D in a form that's acceptable and not synthetic and not going to harm you. But really, for the most part, even people in northern climates and so on that don't get so much sun, again, if that was an issue, we would have it in foods. I mean, I don't know whether you're a believer in creation or evolution, but either way, whichever I mean, I'm a strong believer in creation, and we were created with everything we need, and we get enough from the sun. We can store vitamin D for a very long time, so you can, as long as you get in the sun when you have it. In this, if I'm from the UK, we don't get a lot of sun, but we're not all dying of vitamin D deficiency. So the whole thing comes from big pharma to sell a lot of synthetic supplements, and unfortunately, it's been picked up by the natural health world, by practitioners that don't do their research. If you've got a practitioner telling you to go and test for vitamin D and then act on that basis, then you're really talking to a practitioner that doesn't know their stuff, and I wouldn't recommend using that practitioner. Okay, so if you are gonna get tested, I'm not even sure if if there is available to the public general test that tests the whole range of vitamin D, but that's what you need. There's no point in having a test just for 25D, the inactive form of vitamin D. So don't do it. And as I say, if you do want to supplement, use food supplements from real food. There's not many things with D in it, and as I say, that's for a reason, because we really need that much D. We get enough from the sun as long as we're getting outside when we have sun. Okay, so I just thought I'd throw that out there. I've tried to keep it very simple. I'm hoping at some point to do an interview with an expert friend of mine, Jim Stevenson. Maybe he'll get around to doing that with me. We've been talking about it for months, but he really goes into deep into the science of it all. Um, but for a lot of people, it will be too deep. So this message is aimed at the average person. Hopefully, you'll get the message that I'm trying to put out. Okay, God bless everybody. Have a great day, and don't fall for the vitamin D scam.